lover of all things wedding related, and welcome to the Wedding Wisdom Podcast with your hosts, Tonya Hoops and Morgan Powell.
Hi, Morgan. How are you today?
Good. How are you doing, Tonya?
Good. All right. Today we're going to talk about a very sensitive subject.
Okay, I'm prepared.
Let's talk about the B word.
Budgets?
Yeah, let's talk about budgets.
Okay.
Yeah, budgets play a very big role in weddings.
They do.
Yeah, they do. And budgets can be very different for people. You know, you could have a $10,000 wedding budget. You could have a $3 million wedding budget.
Yes.
Very different, right?
Very different weddings.
Yes. And so what I recommend that any couple ever does before they start planning is figure out what their budget is.
Yes.
And the way you figure out your budget is this. First, you have to figure out who is paying for the wedding. Yep. So it could be your parents. It could be uncles and aunts. And I've seen all of this happen over the years. It could be yourselves. It could be a mixture thereof. It could be like this mom and dad is giving you $10,000 and this one's giving you $50,000 and you have $50,000. Of course, I'm making that all up.
Right. Those are easy numbers that we can add in our head, though. So.
Yes. So we know we have $110,000 to spend based on what I just said, right? Yeah. So those are easy numbers to add up. So then once you know exactly how much money you have, then what you need to do is break the budget down. But how do you break the budget down if you don't know, right? Most people have never done a wedding before. Now, maybe your parents have done another sibling's wedding, but sometimes also what happens is, I will tell you, prices can jump drastically in a year.
I was going to say in a very short amount of time. We saw that really in 2020.
Yes.
They just started to skyrocket and people would be like, I did a wedding 6 months ago and why is it 3 times what it was? Yeah. So yeah, prices can jump. Also, I mean, there are a lot of factors in pricing where if your sister, because everybody loves being compared to their sister. But if your sister had, roses, for example, that were in season, they might be less expensive. And your favorite flower is peonies, and they're not in season. You have to fly them from Alaska to be here. So there are some other factors even within those vendor categories that affect the budget as well.
Yep. And so the way that then we work from there is the next thing is we take that budget and say, okay, here's percentages that we usually use to break it down. So typically we'll say venue cost, food and beverage cost. And the reason I say those two together is some venues your food and beverage have to go through the venue, right? Others, they don't. And so, but you still want to gauge those two pretty systematically together. So somewhere between 30 and 40% of your budget is typically going to be your venue and your catering. Yeah. And when I say catering, that also should include like your china, your serviceware. So any of, all of that, your bar bill.
What it costs for you to put food in your guest's mouth.
Correct. Yep. And there's all different ways of doing that, right?
Yeah.
And so here's the thing about budgets too. I want to stop and say something. Whether you have that $10,000 budget or that $3 million budget, it really doesn't matter. What matters is that you then say, okay, here's my budget and how do I work that budget?
Right.
So how do I make this budget work for me? Because you can still have, the day is really about the two of you. Right?
100%. Yep. That is a soapbox I will get on every time.
I do know that. Yes.
Every time.
Every time. And then everything else, the way we usually work it is saying, okay, what's most important to you? So if a couple says to me, photography is number one to me, then I'll say, okay, we're going to put a little more money into photography because we want to make sure we're hiring a great photographer that fits within your budget and your look, of course. Or if a couple says to me, you know what, I want a band. Okay, bands are not less expensive than DJs, right? And so in that case, then we know, okay, we need to add a little more money to the band and maybe photographers getting a little bit less money. So that's how we kind of gauge those areas are what's most important to you. And then you've got to be careful that you don't forget the small detail stuff. So in that budget, we include things like signage. So like your welcome signs, your escort cards, your seating charts, those all cost money. And there's ways to do them for very inexpensive. And then there's like really fabulous designers across the world that create like over the top, absolutely beautiful designs. But of course, they're more expensive.
Yes.
And so what we need to make sure that you include all of those things. You don't forget about the dress or the suits or, whatever that you are wearing as a couple. that needs to be included in there.
Right.
If you're traveling somewhere, you might include your travel, you might not. So some things, sometimes people don't include the budget. I've had situations where someone says, my mom's paying for the dress. So it's not really part of the budget because the budget is coming from different sources, and that's fine too. Then you can kind of navigate your budget that way.
Well, and I think like going back to the very beginning, you can't know how to allocate the budget if you don't know what the budget is. And so in fact, I was just at my sister-in-law's house, and we were talking about weddings and just life in general and stuff. And she commented that one of her kids, their budget was getting a little tight. And so they were going to skimp a little bit on the photography. And she was just like, I really think you're going to just be disappointed in that.
Yep.
And so they went ahead and she said, this is my wedding gift to you. It's not part of the budget.
Yep.
It's more than what we contributed to the wedding. And that was their wedding gift to the couple. And so there's some of those things too. I think that's one of the things though, when you're thinking about your budget and you're talking to people, ask what their expectations are. Because there are some people that are going to say, here's a check for $50,000. Do with it what you will. I don't need to be involved in the decision. There are other people that are like, no, I want to hold on to the money. I've given you what I'm willing to spend, but I want to be the one to write the check to the vendors. And there are other people or other families that their thing is, I'm paying for the flowers, so I want to pick the florist and have a decision, have a say in what your florals look like. And so I think having those conversations as well as just how much they're contributing is so important because if you and your mom like drastically disagree on what color your wedding should be, and she's like, no, it is blush pink. We do blush pink. That's what it is. And your dream is to have like an orange and red fire dancers or something, something really bright and bold. That's going to cause friction in the planning process. So if you can have those understandings going into it, I think that really is helpful. And with that, you might say, I appreciate that you're willing to help, but I'm going to decline your help because I would rather have the opinion than the money.
Yep. And that does happen. We see it as planners happen all the time.
Yeah.
I have nightmare stories over this. I did have a situation with a mother and a bride where they disagreed on the flowers and the florist. And so here's another thing to know is typically whoever's signing the contract and paying is then the final decision maker. And so the florist had done the whole design based on the bride's look and feel. And then the mother said, no, here's what I want. And so they changed it. And then the bride came back and said, no, here's what I want. And the florist ended up doing what the bride wanted. And unfortunately, the day of the wedding, the mother was so mad, she literally destroyed the bouquet.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, not a great thing, but it did happen. And so you do want to have those clarifying conversations. And we'll have a whole couple conversations about family because, family does play a large role in weddings. And so we'll definitely have a conversation about that.
So I think that's just one thing that I wanted to mention, though, was when you're thinking about your budget, it's so much more than just how much money you're getting from various entities. Having those conversations about expectations as well. It might be more cost effective to not include the money from a particular party rather than deal with the headache that is having your bridal bouquet destroyed on your wedding day.
Yeah, which, that was an extreme story. Please know that I do have one-offs that are extreme stories as a
planner.
We all
do.
Yep.
We all do.
But it is an extreme story. That's not the norm. Most get along and say let's go and says, okay, this is okay. But with all that being said, one thing that's important about budgets is weddings can be very emotional. And I have seen so many mistakes made with budgets. And so let me give you my top 3. My first one is that someone runs out and books a vendor before they know their budget.
Yes.
And by doing that, I've seen situations where people have booked venues that are like 3 times what they should be paying for. The other thing that they don't check in that is what does that venue include?
Right.
So here's a venue that now maybe their preferred list is like the highest price caterers.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, wait a second. I only have so much for food and I can't even afford the food of these preferred vendors.
Right.
So it's a very important, that you don't book any vendors until you absolutely know what your budget are. So that's number 1. Number 2 is that you know every single thing that particular vendor item comes with. So if it's photography, let's use photography. How many hours of photography? How many pictures do you get edited? Does it include a book? Does it not include a book? Does it include certain photos? Do you get all the images? Do you get raw images? Most photographers are not giving raw images. I will say that. No. But does it include all those things? So those are the first two. So we have, don't ever book anything until you know your budget. Second, make sure you're asking the right questions. And third is if you find something that like you just love and it's outside of your budget line item. So for instance, photography, and you want to hire Morgan, and Morgan's, a couple $1,000s more than what you had planned in that line item. Before you pull that trigger, go and see where you can pull that money from.
Right.
Because if you can pull it, say, from flowers, or if you can pull it from catering, then you have the money in the budget. Now, if you can't, you're like, look, there's nowhere to pull it. Then you have to make the decision. Do I have more money? Mm-hmm. Can I come up with more money? Maybe, your parents are gifting you the wedding, but you're like, you know what? I really want this photographer. So personally, I'm going to spend the extra couple $1,000.
Right.
And so those are my 3 rules about budget.
Well, and I would say, I think the Knot or Wedding Wire, one of those years ago, commented that most couples spend about 20 to 30% more than their anticipated budget, like just across the board with all of the incidentals and fees and all of that kind of stuff. And so maybe this is a funny tip, but if you take what your full budget is, so let's just say it's $100,000 because math is easier, and then that most people go 20 to 30% over. And so if you were working on a $70,000 or an $80,000 budget, so you have that little bit of cushion, you can go to 100, but you're trying to keep it in that lower price point, could be really helpful if you do find a vendor that you end up falling in love with that is a little bit more than what you anticipated spending.
Yeah, that's a fabulous idea. As a planner, we actually take their whole budget and plan it out, but we also then really talk them through it.
Yeah.
Okay, this is how much we have for catering. And okay, I know you love this caterer. How much is it worth? Is it worth less flowers? Is it worth a different photography? So we have all those conversations, but we know the cost, right? So that makes it different too. I think one of the reasons that weddings get bad names when it comes to money a lot of times is because people don't know what it costs, or they don't know, I booked this venue and I didn't realize that it didn't come with chairs and tables and tablecloths, and now I have to go add that to the cost of the venue.
Right.
Or the caterer doesn't have china, and so now I've got to have the rental company bring it in, which these are all things that are normal, but you just don't know what you don't know ahead of time.
100%. And I will say too, the best piece of advice I ever got and that I give to clients all the time is I recommend that you get engaged and you're all excited and you're ready to start planning your wedding and your forever and all of those things. I suggest you guys take a date night, sit down, independent of each other, write down your list of your top 3. What are the top 3 things that are important to you? So maybe that's your dress. Maybe it's photography. Maybe it's the DJ. Maybe it's the food. Maybe you guys are huge foodies and food is really important to you. Whatever those top 3 things are. And you do that separately. And then you grab your favorite beverage and your favorite snack, and you guys come together and compare lists and see where things might overlap.
Yep.
And where things are very different. And I use this example all the time. For me, all I cared about was beautiful pictures. For obvious reasons.
I wonder why.
Geez, I wonder why.
Yeah, I wonder why.
For my husband, his big thing was he wanted to have a first dance. I didn't really care. I've since changed my tune, but that was really important to him, was that we have a first dance.
Oh, a first dance is so important.
It is.
Yeah.
And so because of that, that's what we prioritized. We prioritized photos, and he ended up hiring a singer to come in and sing our first dance song to make that a really special moment. And so those were some things that we worked together on so that he got what was most important to him. I got what was most important to me. And the rest of it, we were like, okay, whatever, we don't care. Our wedding was beautiful. I'm biased. It's my favorite wedding ever. But
do you tell your clients that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Just making sure.
I do. I tell my clients that it's my favorite. Our wedding was my favorite wedding, but also that I had my wedding. So, but having those conversations and knowing what's important to your spouse or your future spouse, I think also helps when you're having those budget conversations, because then you can maybe say, oh, we want to spend a little bit more here, and we're willing to not have as many florals, or maybe eat off of, plastic dinnerware instead of actual china, or there's a lot of ways to cut costs and to finagle those budgets.
Yeah, there definitely are. But again, knowing what your budget is the key point, and know who's involved is definitely the key point.
Step number one.
Yep. Step number one. So with that all being said, we know that like budgets, people don't always know what to put in that budget, right? Yeah. And I also always recommend there's a miscellaneous item too. So we have a budget that you can download for free, and you can go ahead and put your numbers in there. You can play with it. And if there's something on there you don't need, you just put a 0 in it. It's that simple. And we have a little tutorial that goes with there on like how to populate it and all that fun stuff. So you can go to weddingwisdom.com and you can see the budget there. We'll also put it in the show notes so you can download it easily. And we'll have it on our social media sites as well. But yeah, definitely you can go and get this budget, and hopefully it will help you to be able to start your wedding on the right foot. And in that, I talk about even the fact that, whoever is donating the money, find out what their requirements are, right? Because if you do have someone that says, look, I'm giving you the money for the florist, like you said, but I want a particular florist and I want to have particular flowers there, then you've got to decide how important that is to you, right? Or like, yes, this is great. This is wonderful. And I can use this florist, and, maybe it's a over the top great florist and you'll be so excited,
right? Which
does happen a lot. So, but yes, please feel free, go download that budget and please use it. And then be able to start planning your wedding without running into those like bumps in the road where you're thinking or feeling like you are spending 20 to 30% more.
I love that. So excited. Thank you so much for sharing your top 3. This was a fantastic conversation, and hopefully that budget tracker helps all of you guys so that you know where your money is going.
Yep. I hope you guys have a great day. Join us next week.
Thank you for listening to the Wedding Wisdom Podcast with your hosts, Tonya Hoops and Morgan Powell. To keep up to date with the latest episodes, like, subscribe, and follow at Wedding Wisdom Blog on all social media platforms. To submit content, please email weddingwisdomblog@gmail.com.